vote, no voice. So never take your right to vote for granted. Take your place and
Extremely easy.
Very easy.
5 minutes, literally. You can do it 5 minutes online. It's you have to be at least 16 to register, 18 to vote, but it's really easy. I mean, young people are obviously tech savvy, internet savvy. So
that shouldn't be too hard for them, right?
It shouldn't be too hard at all.
You don't even need to navigate council sites. Go on the government website, put your details, that's it, job done.
As easy as 1, 2, 3, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
So why are more young people not registering to vote? Of course, that's why we're here having this conversation, to get more young people to register to vote. Why do you think that may be?
I mean, look, I think there's lots of reasons, and I don't want to presume. I mean, I can sort of, I can make some guesses, and I think there's a lot of apathy out there, people not feeling heard, and it's also how you engage with politics, isn't it, and things that are relevant to you. And let's be honest, it's not looking great at the moment. So I think it's just about things being relevant and knowing what they can do. With if I register to vote, what does that mean? What do I get out of that? What does it mean in practice? So I think it's making things real and relevant, really, for young people.
No, definitely. You couldn't have said it any better there. So as a young person yourself, Ella, let's go to you first of all. What does voting mean for you first?
For me, I think voting is having the chance to put forward to the government how you want things to go for the future. It's a chance to let yourself and them know what you want going forward.
Are you registered?
No. I'm not actually. This is why today is going to be very interesting.
But you will be, right?
Yeah, for sure.
After the show, right, you definitely will change that view.
Yeah.
That's what we like to hear. So what about yourself, Michael?
What's voting for me think? Interesting. Voting for me, I guess it's the chance to let people know what you want. What you want for yourself, what you want for your community, and around. I voted before, so does that mean I'm registered? Once you're registered to vote, does that mean you're still registered, or do you have to keep registering for every election?
It depends. It does vary. So if you move address, you have to re-register at your new address.
Yes.
If you don't, then actually when you register, I think you can register kind of indefinitely or to the next election or whatever. So it'll depend on what you put in on your form or when you filled it in online or whatever. But most people fill it in and they're registered indefinitely until they move, and then you'll get a letter through from normally local council or whatever saying, who's at this address, is it still this person or whatever. Just fill your details back in, send it back off, and you make sure that you're back on the register or whatever.
Kind of an update.
Yeah.
Sweet. So Alison, not to leave you out there as well, what does voting mean for yourself there, Mr.?
Yeah, so I guess for me, voting is just about having your voice heard, not just, I guess, on a national level, but also on a local level as well. So from, I guess, what days you want your bins to be collected all the way to who you want to represent you in the Houses of Commons. So I think it's very local, and I think it's also very national, but it's all about having your voice heard.
Okay, I hear you. So one thing I want to get into, because having my conversations with some young people that I've spoken with, is they have this notion of they don't really know, and you said it of course first, Councillor Perret, where it's very easy to just literally go online and vote. Some of these young people don't know exactly where to go or what the process entails. Could we talk more about that, so for those young people can have clarity on voting moving forward?
Yeah. So just literally, as Luke said about 5 minutes ago, there's a website. You go on so it's gov.uk register to vote. I'm sure you'll give the details specifically, but you go on there and you just put in your details. You literally takes 5 minutes. You need your name, date. data published as well for
Yeah.
reasons that we may be doing things that are unpopular, so my address isn't published at the moment. But even though, of course, I'm on the register, so you can opt in or opt out. So you can be on the open register or you can be on the closed register.
Right. Young people, young adults, let's refer to yourself as young adults. Do you necessarily have any fear or had fear when you voted previously or hold any fear voting now?
In regards to my information, no.
Yeah.
You're going to look into the parking in your area. Are you going to look into the parking in your area, or are you just saying, yeah, we're going to look into it to then just take the vote and be happy that you've taken the vote? That's just where my fear has come from.
Okay.
Other than that, no, I don't have fear, and I guess it's just wanting to be done what's been said, sticking to your word. But other than that, no fear involved.
Does that mean that you've been registered but then chosen not to vote?
Yes, so one of the elections we've had a few years ago, pre-Brexit, wasn't before Brexit. There was just a lot of voting around that time. There was maybe one before Brexit, then Brexit happened. Yeah, so one of them I didn't vote in. Then I done the Brexit thing.
Yeah.
After that. I can't remember if I voted since after.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm saying the thing. Because I like to make sure things be done. Also, I have information myself. So, yeah.
So texting to yourself, you've not registered before to vote. What are the sort of things that prevent you from doing so?
I don't actually think that there are. I hate to assume, but I think I'm the youngest out of us on the panel here. So, and I heard before on air that you can actually register from 16, but I didn't know that. So I'm 18, so I assume that this is kind of like my starting journey with the whole voting thing. If I would have known that earlier, I probably would have registered. But yeah, I guess I'm just excited to actually register now that I am eligible to, or I have actually been. But yeah, I don't think I have any anxieties as such to do so. But as you said, making sure that when you do vote for someone, they do what they say they're going to do.
Interesting. I want to highlight there because you said from when you were 16 you weren't aware that you were able to vote. What could you say from the top of your head, because this is very on the spot, man. Relay the message to the younger population, so 15 even turning 16, so they're aware as soon as they turn 16 they can
Well,
vote.
for me, I think the most obvious thing is probably just getting the message out more clearly in schools, because, you know, when you're still, most people are still in school, that's probably the best place for them to get that sort of information from. So yeah, I would say schools, campaigns in schools.
So you would agree with the statement that actually came in, the whole voter registration, education and encouragement should start earlier, like at secondary school?
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting.
I'd agree with that for sure.
What yourself, Alison, you agree with them person too?
So I remember I studied politics at a university, and then I remember GCSE citizenship. Citizenship was actually optional. Understand some things, understand how the country's run, understand who's in charge, what it means, who they are, what you're for, what is a council, and all these things would be really important to them from a young age. I think it's probably as important as maths. Question again. I think I just took it somewhere else, didn't I?
No, you literally answered it to a T in regards to what do you think the government could do to relay the message to the younger population.
at 16. So I guess the question to you is, if you register at, what's the point of registering at 16 if you can't vote till 18? I think maybe some people have that question. I can just wait till I'm 18 to register.
I mean, you're getting in there early.
I don't forget registering to vote helps with lots of things like credit rating, you know, and all of that, getting a mobile phone contract, etc. But I think your answer is spot on. It is about schools. It's political education, isn't it? We were having a conversation before we came in here, which is, you know, understanding how things run, you know. And I think voter registration is fantastic, but actually it sort of it should just come with it. And I think if you learn more in schools, actually what might do to, that's the thing, it gets people engaged, and then, you know, shows them why and how they need to that. You're just pushing things that, you know, for a week. Okay, maybe I will. But it's like earlier, I think that the answer about something is spot on.
And plenty of used to get involved. Like, it's not just necessarily like registering to vote. If schools give that sort of basic level of education, people might be involved in youth parliament or council, or whatever. You start understanding, break down what you're interested in terms of politics. So it may help you kind of work out what your interests are, just outside, you know, outside the world of politics and the bubble that it's in. And just register by getting to schools, if you think more about politics and everything else. But Sarah mentioned a really good point, like you register the steps in getting a good credit rating. And so young people, you know, when you study, we thought about their rating, and they start thinking, oh, I need, you know, Xtra, whatever, a car, or start to think about a house, whatever. And they thought, what have I been doing for the last 50 years to do my credit rating? No one told me. You know, getting on the electoral roll is like, it's a free bonus for your credit rating. So for nothing else, you know, if you're 16 and you're looking at phone contracts or whatever, that's the benefit that you get from it. And then, like I say, you're ready to go when you turn 18, you know, Jackson could come, has done a lot in the last few years. So, you know, registered, you know that on that day you can go and vote, or you can register to vote, you know. And then when you set it off, and your voice heard.
So those young generation that don't even know what a postal vote is, we have to be now. Could you explain what a postal vote is, the difference?
At the moment,
you don't vote online.
in this country, you can't vote online.
No. You don't
For
vote.
sure. But ways of voting, there's kind of a third sort of. But the one that everyone thinks of is going to a polling station on the day, right? Put it in a box and put it in the ballot box. You know, if you're living in the same place online and you're going to be available on that day, that's great. Yeah, polls are open 7 till 10 normally, so you've got plenty of time outside of school, outside, you know, whatever. But plenty of people may not be able to go on that day, so they can register for a postal vote. The ballot comes to you before polling day itself, and you can actually vote before. As soon as you go through, you can fill it in the envelope that they provide and send it there, and then and you vote 3 week polling or whatever. It means that if, you know, for example, you might be going to university, you want to make sure that you have that paid for you, to you or whatever. Post it back, you know you've done anything, you know that you voted. First, you vote, still vote on your behalf, which you can register for as well. So there are 2 main methods of going in the polling station or getting their postal and sending it back box or mail. You can even take that on the well if you want.
When you go into the polling station without it, you can't vote, so you have to, if you're on the postal, you have to take that in and you vote on the day.
Gives you a bit more time to think as well sometimes, you know. If you just turn up at the polling station, you mentioned doing your own research to make sure you kind of align with what people are saying. If you get your postal ballot through, you don't have to kind of do all of that, like, oh, I've got to check who I'm voting for online or whatever. You've got the names in front of you. You can go then and look them up, right? Just search for this person, what are they saying? Search for this party, what are they saying? Gives you a bit of time to think. You know, look through each person, work out. Some elections you kind of rank, like London elections, mayoral elections. You can rank your order of preference rather than just voting for one person. So you might take a bit more time to look through each one and say, yeah, I like this one best, then that one, then that one. Do it that way.
A lot of tips and nuggets on the show tonight, guys. A lot of tips and nuggets. One question that's really interesting, because you touched on it for those younger people going off to university. So this question is held from a young person. As a student, can I register at my student accommodation, or do I have to?
I think the answer is
You
both.
do both.
So I think you can register at both.
Long time since I was a student. But
Yeah, same.
You can do both.
Wow.
I think you can register at
Yeah.
both. Some elections, I think you can vote at both as well, like local elections. That's double checked.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm pretty sure-
I'm gonna double. Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure. But certainly you can register. You can register at both, and when you move into your student accommodation, you can either go in online, do the same as you would have done at home, or you can wait until that letter comes through, because each council will do a regular update of their electoral roll every year. Maybe they might do one just before an election, so you'll get a letter through anyway saying who's registered to vote at this address. Just bear in mind that if you're if you're sharing a house, you may only get that letter. There may only be one of those letters, so it may only come to one of you. Not everyone might know, so just bear that in mind. If you think it's not come through, then go online, make sure you register yourself, and you can do the same if you're in halls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it here first on Unity Xtra. We're going to go to some music right here, but we are going to come back right after this, so don't go anywhere. You are listening to Your Voice, Your Vote special show tonight on Unity Xtra. Keep it locked.
And it only takes a few minutes to do to make sure your voice is heard by registering to vote today.
We'll do it while we wait in the break.
Council, you're correct. In local elections, you can vote in both. But you see, you can be registered town plan address. And in local elections, you can vote in both. In general election, you can only vote in one, and it's a criminal offence to vote more than once in general election.
But you would receive 2 polling cards, right?
I believe you would do, yes.
But you would have to
You
destroy
would
one.
have to choose one that you would vote in, yeah.
How does that get counted? How do you count for just a random thing? Yeah. That word is really loose. Okay.
As I say, it is a criminal offence to vote twice.
Yeah. I'm sure.
It's a criminal offence. November 2030. The key message: every voice must be heard. No vote, no voice. So never take your right to vote for granted. Take your voice and right to vote. Back to our studio guests, and we feel how easy it is to register to vote. The young people pick up from there. We have options which were sent in young people who live, work, and study in Haringey. Heading over to Ella and Alison.
My question is, who is not allowed to vote in Haringey?
People who don't live in Haringey.
Straightforward, huh?
Who want to vote. I mean, there's some elections and they say
It varies
depending
by
on
election.
so, you know, EU citizens vote in certain elections.
So how you said that in a vote and you vote before the polling station vote.
Yeah.
What do you vote through in between the time and the poll vote? So is that fine? Or?
You know, when you see the postal vote, it's all quite serious. I mean, I get really nervous myself when I have to do it. You can't, you don't get it back.
Yeah.
It gets sort
Heal
of
up and everything,
Yeah.
security and whatever. The end get have cast you out. Yeah. Ballot paper is anonymous. You know, won't have a name on the ballot paper itself, anything like that. Even though obviously it was posted out, you know, it's completely anonymous. So when it's open, who's voted for and whatever else. So it'd be quite tricky to retract. So yeah, be sure that you have any reason you voted and else before you can.
I guess we've heard a lot about electoral legitimacy and people just don't want to know if, you know, like, are we in a place where our elections are illegitimate? What would you say to, I guess, people in some place?
What do we mean by legitimate?
It's sort of news kind of
Legitimate elections.
yeah, kind of, we know that poison people want to use terror and someone uses them doesn't the election just votes.
Yeah.
Basically, I think a pretty robust in the UK. Sure, we'll touch on it, but you know, there's potentially probably the introduction about card on this, just kind of going to eliminate fraud. But the actual numbers of me is like, it's, you know, still what less than.
We're quite a privileged position here. I mean, I don't, you know, I thought what I think I think we can probably talk. How we trust what to do. I think we're on a, but I think in terms of kind of
sort of full as well, when votes are encountered, parties are allowed to be there, there's kind of independent they're checking and whatever.
I mean, if you have me, but go to account if you're, you know,
I personally don't know myself.
Yeah, of course, yeah. It's done.
What's the process like? Yeah, tell us.
We lay that we go in a bit early if I was in work, to go town when the vans come like, and then they get dropped off to us like in front of. There's like several media, so it's like people that opened the letters and like both sent, but there's different level, and but we're always being watched as well. While being watched, you're opening letters, so you yourself can't commit like the how it works and stuff. But there is definitely check all around. You like walks. I would have any things about voters, about any decision made false. I say, for instance, politicians know what they're going to do. I mean, I can definitely myself the bad thing as fair and cool. America.
Let me put this in the whole thing. What can we do? You know, I want to. You know, how come
I think talking to people in the language they understand what that language is, and actually seeing people that they can identify with within the political sphere. I think it's I can identify that person that feels real to me, rather than distance. I think we're talking about education, people and more get involved in that. So I think it's a wider thing, and I think vote is one step, but this is how you assist the political process was heard through various channels. So I think it's about us, you know, I'm sure Luke will agree, as politicians, making sure we're talking about these and we're our best kind of conversation and the way that open up that dialogue.
It's a lot of the kind of the world is very the point that they're saying the establishment is telling one thing, but actually the truth is something different. And we're saying, believe the establishment. You know, so that really doesn't work. Yeah. So we need to work out how we can counter this kind of method that they've introduced of kind of obliterating truth by making the sources of truth not seem truthful, and get spaces where things are being spread, and it tends to be on things like social media, right? If you get a message from someone that you might know or know, or kind of like, you know, someone from YouTube that you've watched videos, and that's a conspiracy theory, you might not know that's a conspiracy theory, you just believe them. You know, so you are getting information. I'd be interested to hear, you know, because they're places that we need to tap into and work out, right, how can we make sure that all arguments are being presented in space well. Not just space over here saying one thing, this anti-establishment space saying another.
It's also making sure that young people know that they can be part of the establishment.
Absolutely,
well,
yeah.
And it's not a binary thing. I mean, for me, I'm getting the I'm the establishment as you. That's not my background. You know, I didn't come through it an easy path. You know, both my parents left school at the age of 11 in Cyprus, where they're from. You know, so it's kind of saying to young people that this isn't binary. I'm not different to you. You know, now I'm establishment, but actually it's about how you're part of that power and decision making. Really,
it's such an important subject that we're talking about. Do you think it should be added into the curriculum?
100%. And I guess it's when we was on break, I was mentioning how we had the Model United Nations, and we got to see how the United Nations work. And although it was different because it was done within like school as in schools, so different members of schools will represent different countries, but even within those countries they'll have different sectors to look at. But we did have to go away, even whatever our own personal views of a country was, yours that country, so you had to represent them in how, and also see their needs. So if you was a third world country, you'd have to be speaking to these bigger countries and tell them what their issues are, what foreign aid they may need. But then I have to research that from other countries. So now I'm to another country, I'm like, oh wow, this country really has, you can hear third world, but now you're seeing how much of how much you're seeing their GDP, you're seeing how much per person earns, and then you start making little comparisons to yourself. Even as you hear a country, now it's like you're doing natural research on a country. Things like in politics, where we have House of Commons. I know we have things like youth councils, but they're far between, and even then, not many people, I'd say, know about them. The other day, I heard about someone mention the youth council. I said, we still have youth councils. I was unaware. And I guess there's a lot of people that young people feel that their voices aren't heard because of things like the youth council. When I was in school, we used to have things like that. But there seems to be always gaps. We had school council, but then after school council wasn't much, but it's a school. But then you can have your youth council, but then what comes after the youth council? And although you can register to vote at 16, what happens in those 2 years? Because I've registered to vote at 16, but then nothing happens. Then it's like, what happened when I'm 18? That's a 2-year gap. So it's like, what happens in those time periods? It's like, there has to always be continuous, but it seems to be like little gaps here and there. And yeah, that's where people don't get to understand what these things are, because they're not really introduced to them. What we get told is, which I think is great, like the credit rating. And that seems like something that's always said, like, improve your credit. But I'm 15, I'm 16, like, my mum, so it's like, I hear it improving my credit, but then at 16, I'm like, I don't earn money, so I can't get a phone. So what credit am I improving? Because I haven't had that introduction to it yet.
Most people might not even know what credit is at that point, right?
We read a lot of people
between a credit card and a debit card, for example. You know.
But I think to add to that, if correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, but registering to vote gives you points to your credit.
100%, yeah.
So it's a
but
start.
I guess it's like, what does it mean when someone says, here's credit?
For a young person, I mean, that would be very attractive for whatever you're trying to buy. Credit.
Yeah. But I guess it's just like
an incentive,
introduction. Yeah. That's incentive. Yeah. What does incentive mean? But then when you find out, it's like, okay, better credit means I can get a house. I can get a mortgage for when I'm 30. And then that kind of opens the idea, and now I'm going to want to see how politics is really running and what decisions I'm making, and then how it then impacts other things. I think that becomes super useful for people wanting to do their own research.
To make sure as well, like if it's introduced at school, I think you made a good point about school council, right? We had school council at school, which wasn't all that long ago, but you know, and actually those that got onto school council tended to just be those that were academically good. It wasn't representative. Wow. And actually that can put people off. If you feel like, well, these are the same people that get elected to school council as are going to get elected to parliament in the future, and that's not me, then you're going to be put off. So it's not just about having something there, it's about getting everyone involved, making sure everyone's represented when it is there, when it is in place. It's good to have it compulsory for everyone, but we need to say, look, politics is about representation, right? It's about making sure every voice is heard. So that needs to happen at every level. And if we put people off like straight out of the doors when they're 14, 15, whatever it is, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So I think that needs to be carefully thought through and crafted so that everyone does feel like, I could be on council or youth parliament or whatever it is, in my school or in my borough or, you know, whatever the setup is, and give everyone that voice.
You say give everyone that voice. How can we reassure, and I say we because it takes all of us to really make this happen, you know? How can we reassure young people that their voice is being heard? Because there's a lot of young people who have registered to vote, have voted in the past, but they also feel, what's the point? My voice ain't being heard. And
important, right? You know, there's one thing hearing someone, it's another thing listening to someone. So we need to make sure that we're listening to people. That, you know, it's not, people aren't just votes. Like a lot of people think politicians just count people as votes. Politicians don't do that. It doesn't work like that. They do engage, they do listen to people. They want to understand what people value. I think a lot of people though, they don't understand that every single kind of touch point throughout their day is politics, right? They are engaging with it every single day. Their school is probably run by their council, who's run by a council leader. You know, so there are decisions being made all of the time that affects them, but they can. It's a two-way engagement, isn't it? You know, they may be able to be available to have that kind of that voice, that say, and it's for politicians to go, yeah, we're listening to you. We don't just hear you, we're listening as well. And there's things that young people want in life and want from their politicians that's very different to their parents or their grandparents. May have completely different views, and if they're not being represented, it's easy to kind of get sold by what you think is like the mass voice, but actually that tends to be just the loudest voice.
Yeah.
So we need to be making sure that we hear everyone, and people need to be in that position to be heard and put themselves forward to be heard, and not just the same voices. We got the same people come to us time and time again, and you think, oh, are they really representing, or they're just representing themselves, kind of thing. So that's why you need to get a good sample size of everyone, get into schools, but get into other young people's places and see what they're saying, see what they want. But we speak to people on the doors all the time, and my experience is young people answer the door and they go, "Oh, I'll get my mum and dad." That's what
typical, yeah.
Yeah. Why? Go speak to them. Speak to that person
it is
on the
the
door.
things you engage with people on, I think, is really important. So you talk about the youth, but you talk about crime, you talk about so it depends. You have to talk to people about things that are relevant to them. But also, I guess my challenge to young people, it's you've said quite a few times that politicians have to do what they said, but so what are you going to do about it? Because actually you've got to be in it to change it, right? 100%. And I think that was always my thing. It's kind of, you can sit back and go, what are you going? What's this politician? What are you? I guess it's that thing about standing up and being counted. And I felt strongly about it, so I got involved in politics as well. So I mean, not everyone's going to get involved in politics. As Luke says, there's a thing about engagement and listening, but actually there's something about saying, I'm going to be part of this because I can do better. Yeah. This is relevant for me, and I can do this as well.
And you can be involved without being a politician, right? There's loads of young people, that are involved in climate change, for example. Yes. Like Extinction Rebellion, they're not a political party, but they are a political voice, right? There are plenty of ways of going and getting involved in lobbying and issues-based stuff that maybe feels relevant to you, because those groups also have power. It's not just about, the main political parties and who they get elected and whatever. Like, people listen to Extinction Rebellion. They're listening to what protests are happening. They may not like them, but they're listening to them, right? That's true. So there are other options rather than just becoming a politician for you to have your voice heard.
What new strategies can the council use to get more 16 to 18-year-olds roll out to encourage more younger people to register?
A very long time. So, what's you tell us? I mean, I think that's the point, isn't it? It's about
100%.
Kind of asking you what can we do? You tell us.
I mean, I said schools. I still think schools is a very big thing to do, because a lot of kids get their information from school, and a lot of kids, as you said, aren't that into politics because I don't think they've been exposed to it as much as they could have been. So I think it's a great place for that to take place. But then I was also going to ask, do you think that, like, as the council, would you say that your relationship with the youth in the borough that you represent is, like, at a place where you want it to be?
I think we can always do better, and we've got some really, really good stuff going on, but can we do better? 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think it's good, but I would say, like, I look back on, like, years, especially when I was, like, before the age of 16 or 16 and before I could vote and stuff like that. Maybe it's just a personal experience, but I would say that maybe there could be more, like, things that go on in the community that bridge the younger people and the council, whether that's, like, community events or whatever the case is. I just think, like, maybe it's good to build a relationship where they feel like they feel connected to you guys through experiences growing up.
So, question to yourself, Ella, just to add on that as well. As a young person within Haringey, what sort of community event would you necessarily like to see happen that you could participate in as a young person and feel, okay, the community is really looking out for us?
Yeah, I mean, I would say maybe, like, events that relate to things that young kids are into, whether that's, like, maybe you could, like, hold a music festival or something where they can go and see things that they enjoy and that they can showcase themselves and they can all relate to. But the theme of it is around trying to connect them with the council and with those people at the top, because they see those people there at things that they enjoy and feel like, oh, okay, like there's a bridge between us two. So I'd say something like that.
Okay. Do you guys share the same views, Michael, Alison?
To an extent, I guess it's more so a lot of it is also accountability in terms of the individual, because the individual also has to be interested. You can't force someone to just tell someone to be interested. Not everyone's going to be interested in politics.
That's true.
And that's unfortunate, but politics will always influence your life, no matter whether you like it or not. So there's that balance of whether you agree with, like, whatever your view is, politics will affect you. So in terms of engagement, like as I said, like having, for example, I've always seen structures where me as an individual would have to connect with a teacher and then report back to my class, and then go to my class and say, well, go back to the teacher and say, well, my classroom wants this. There's the connection there for like, hence why school council is like very important. Even like or you come to our sixth one, but in prom, where I was in school, I was on the board there. We're looking at desserts for a prom, like, we don't want this. So, but I'm relaying back to the teacher and saying, well, we don't want this dessert, we're saying we want this one, we're having all taste tests. But I can report back, and there's a connection in between. It's just having, even though it's like, that's just food. But then, even I'm just speaking about food, someone can say, oh yeah, I don't even like how Miss done her lesson that time, you know. I can say, oh yeah, that food was good, yeah. Oh, Miss, just also, Kyle over here didn't like how X, Y, Z. Obviously, I'm not pushing boundaries, but I'm just saying. But then there is just that discourse and there's just that small connection, that small rapport, which then can expand. I just think there's not much of rapport. And just to finish off,
we probably need to do better introducing what councillors are and what we do
there's
as
that
councillors.
What is a councillor?
And what we are there for, because people will see the council as this thing, this body, and councillors are just part of that, but not really have an idea that councillors are there to represent, people that live in the area they're elected by. We're not just working for the council or anything, far from it in some cases, so we want the best for the community, we're not just a machine. And I think that there's kind of a lot of people that don't even know what councillors are, they never heard of them. They just think, go straight to MP. And actually a lot of the issues you can get real good support from your councillors for things that are kind of local to you, improvements to your area, or like, I've got this problem, or whatever it is. And they're also good people that just to tap into and say, look, I don't know where to go with this. Can you help direct me? Point to someone or whatever. That they're an extra resource in your life that can be, made use of.
Just gone an hour, and we've got an hour more to go. Keep it up right here, people. You're tuned into Your Voice, your vote on Unity Xtra. It's a Monday evening on the 8 o'clock timestamp. Don't go anywhere. We are Unity Extra Monday evening. Welcome to the special radio show that's featured tonight and Thursday as a part of London Voter Registration Week, which runs from you know when you lack the knowledge on a particular topic that you don't necessarily want to be vocal about because whether it's you don't want to be embarrassed because you don't know too much about it, but the interest is there. Would you guys agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
You guys agree with that?
Yeah.
They're shaking their heads in the studio, people. So let me ask young adults first of all, if we haven't already touched on it. Young siblings in your family?
Older.
No, do you have any young own thinking into wanting to register to vote?
So for me, I think that living with me was a headache because as soon as I turned 16, that's all I could talk about. The fact that I wanted to register to vote.
Because you're just to add there, because you're pretty much really into politics, right? As a young person from our conversation. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm really into politics since I can remember. Like I used to stay up every election night, watch it. I did not go to sleep, even on school nights. It was Thursday, so stayed up all night till like 4 a.m. I remember my dad used to have to force me to go to sleep.
Wow.
And I always had it at the TV on like the news. When I woke up, I could see what happened the night before. But the point of that is, I do think that there are a lot of young people that are I find it hard to say that people do not actually care about the way decisions are made concerning them. I don't think it's a fair statement to make. I think people are typically concerned with the way decisions are made. Not registered, and like 23, 24, still not registered to vote. I know people that are significantly older that are not registered to vote too, so I do genuinely think that there is a problem with that. I don't know if this stat's correct or like right, but I do recall somewhere it said that the strongest political force or group are the people that don't vote. That's the largest number of people, the ones that don't actually vote. So I know you asked me a question, but to ask you guys a question, do you think young people can actually swing elections?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if they came out in force, I think that the elections that are happening at the moment in America, which most people won't be following, and those that are following, like me, probably don't have a clue what's going on because they get quite complicated and all of this. But I think there's quite striking stats coming out about how young people have really turned out in the elections in America, and that has just kind of swung it to the Democrats versus the Trump-backed Republicans, and I think that was quite unexpected. So yeah, I think that a real kind of wave of support for a particular person, a particular party, whatever it is, whatever it needs, could bring more people out from particular group, young people, whatever it is, urban people, rural people, whatever it may be, and totally can swing a result. Politics is, it's so unpredictable at the moment, right? It can it can change on nothing. We had local elections this year, and one of the wards, two votes 4 votes in it, was there? Something like that, in one of the wards.
Oh, right, yeah, not mine.
No, not yours. In one of the wards. So, if you think, right, if it's 4 votes, well, actually, that's just 2 people changing from one side to the other, right?
Wow. Yeah.
To get a different person elected. It's one family that has a different conversation the day before. So we're not talking about like masses of volumes of young people getting involved to get a particular candidate elected or anything like that. It's just making sure that there's representation there, so that in those marginals, actually, that's going to make a big difference. So yeah, 100% young people can make a difference.
I've got some great stats here actually, and it says 70% of 16 to 24-year-old Londoners are registered to vote, compared with 96% of Londoners 65 and over. Stat 1, 82% of Londoners from a black, Asian or minority ethnic background are registered, compared to 95% of white British Londoners as well. So it's about young, but it's also about the different categories within that as well. And actually, if we look at voter turnout, Luke's just mentioned the local elections, there's a vast difference in Haringey between the east and the west of our borough. So the west of the borough, I think the highest turnout was 51% in one ward. In the east, in Tottenham, 25%, right? That's a real marked difference. So it's about age, but it's about other factors as well.
And that's 25% of those that are registered. So that's ignoring all those that aren't registered as well. So yeah, you're right about that kind of like the biggest group is those that aren't voting. Absolutely. Even if it were 51%, actually that's ignoring those that aren't registered, isn't it? So that's going to be less than 50% actually that have gone out there and voted.
It's generational. I mean, as you know, my mum is 81, right? She came to this country in the 1960s. She's Turkish, Cypriot. And my mum will never, ever miss an election. Ever. She would never. And even when I was younger, because she knew how important it is to be heard, to have that representation. And yeah, okay, is the cynicism there? Yes. But generationally, they go along. And I think that's the same for a lot of communities in this borough, where they understand the real importance of voting.
Do you feel that's had an impact on yourself, where it's made you want to vote because of your mum being very
I had no choice. So when I was 18, 19, it'd be like, you're coming to, it's open till 10 o'clock, you've got to go and vote. And it was good because, my parents weren't, they weren't educated at all. Mum was a seamstress, dad was a welder. And then he had a small business, and for them it was like they engaged in terms of voting and didn't really, there were certain issues they were interested in. But yeah, for me definitely it was about how do I use the political process to make a difference.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask I thought there's like a lot of confusion, as we mentioned earlier, that there's councillors and then you have the MPs.
Mm-hmm.
What are the differences in that? Because I thought some people don't know that there are actually a difference, and how does it affect?
Yeah.
What's the roles of this?
So take Haringey for example. So Haringey is a borough, and there's 31 or 32 boroughs across London. Haringey's a borough. Haringey at the moment is made up of 2 constituencies. So you've got Tottenham, which is represented by David Lammy, and then you've got Hornsey Green, which is represented by Catherine West. So MPs represent you in Parliament. So you vote on the constituency lines. If you live in Tottenham, you either vote for David or someone who represents one of the other parties. And they represent you in Parliament, where they make national kind of legislation. And that's so MPs have a different role. So in a way, we kind of but we don't. We run local services. So your council, we're the ones who run your bins, your social services, your social care, youth services. So our responsibility is your roads. What's going on in the roads, parking, all sorts. So we have, that's local democracy as well. And in terms of how we sort of interact, so I'm leader of the council. So there is often, and I sort of chuckle about it, people think we sort of report into the MPs, and it's not like MPs. It's much more glamorous in a lot of ways, but it's just a different role. So they represent a constituency, and of course we interact with them. But we have the responsibility for running the local council, and Haringey's made up of 57 councillors. I can't remember how many wards. Some wards have 3 councillors, some have 2 councillors, and then we all, and it's run by the majority party, and we make decisions on that basis. And I'm the leader of my group, so that means I'm therefore leader of the council.
So would it be then fair to say it's kind of easier to, when I say easier, if I have an issue, would it be easier to go to my local councillor than?
Depends on the issue, right?
Right.
So MPs will deal with, there's immigration issues like that, then it's your MP, you know, councils don't deal with that. It really depends on the issue. So there's some issues MPs will deal with and some issues councils will deal with.
But you don't necessarily have to be the one to work that out.
Yeah.
If you went to your local council and they said, look, this is a national issue, actually, probably better if your MP was the one assisting you with this, then normally, and if I'm sure Parrot is the same and all of our councils do the same, they would then refer you on or say, can we pass you on to your local MP to help, because that's not really our thing, and vice versa. So, you know, if you wrote to an MP but it was a council issue, then, you know, in some instances they may take that up directly with the council on your behalf, but in some other cases, probably majority of cases, they'd go, that's actually a councillor issue, here are your local councillors, they introduce you, and then they go and assist and would help you, and you can build that relationship. You know, a lot of people within their local community know who their local councillors are as much as they know who local MPs are, and a huge amount don't. They've got absolutely no idea. It depends on where you live and how long they've been in place and how involved you are or whatever, but don't kind of have to feel like you have to navigate who to go to about a particular issue. You know, just go to one of them and say, I'm not sure if this is you, but can you help? Should I be going to someone else? Yeah. But it's tricky, isn't it? Because, as Paris says, there's 57 councillors in Haringey, all representing tiny little different pockets of Haringey, and at the moment, 2 MPs representing the whole thing. So it is slightly different, and you have the majority, as with the government, and the opposition, as with the government, and all sorts of nuances. But everyone is there to represent you, regardless of your politics as well, right? So, you know, if you do have an issue,
little mini government. So
it is, isn't
my
it?
colleagues joke. So I'm kind of like the Prime Minister, and then
Yeah.
you've got the Mayor that's like the Queen or the King, you know, and that's how it's a mini government. And then I've got a cabinet with each person will lead on different elements, whether it's health, whether it's environment. So it's like a little mini government locally.
That's the model right there.
Yeah.
That's our UN model right there. Just touching on the back of what Councillor Luke was saying, just tying in with this question too. 57 councillors. So this question can pertain to this. If I'm registered at 2 addresses, can I choose which constituency I can vote in if I don't like the candidates running for office in my area? So can they base their vote?
Isn't that a good question?
Yeah.
I think you can only register in 2 places if you're a student, for starters. Pretty sure.
Right.
If it's a local election, you could vote in both, so you don't have to make that choice. I don't know whether I should go on record in saying without knowing the actual facts, but I'm pretty sure you can choose. But, you know, let's have someone that's slightly more ministerial.
We'll
be able to clarify that for us.
We'll clarify that for the.
But you know, a lot of people, you know, we've heard anecdotally, let's say, that a lot of people may live in a particular area where they feel like their vote doesn't really matter that much because every single time, you know, politician from one party always gets in, right? They get like 80% of the vote, whatever. It's going to be very difficult for their voice, single voice, to be heard. And they may also be registered somewhere else as a student, which is what's called a swing seat, where actually it might go back and forth between 2 parties, or it might, you know, be 50-50, or it could be split 3 ways. And they may think, actually, my single vote is far more important in this place than it is in my parents or wherever else I might be registered. So there may be an element of that going on. Mm-hmm. Certainly there has been a development over the last 5-10 years, both here and in other countries, about kind of the idea of you voting tactically, depending on what seat you are, and that sort of thing. So that might come into play as well. But yeah, like I say, let's refer to an authority that knows slightly more.
Definitely
get to bring someone in from outside. Tell us off now about what we're saying.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I've got anything more to add. Really, it is about tactical vote, and I think people just immediately. What do you say to that if you don't like your candidate?
As long as they vote
just don't do anything illegal, exactly.
Yeah, don't do anything illegal. You can all look it up online, gov.uk.
Right.
I wouldn't want to be encouraging anything.
Exactly, and to emphasise illegal as well, because I literally just learned this today in this conversation. You can't vote twice. It is illegal to vote twice.
Yeah. unless you're a student registered into your place in a local election, so you can't vote twice in a parliamentary election. General election, we'll call a general election, or a referendum like with Brexit, mayoral elections like voting for London Mayor or anything like that. And you can't be registered as a student and at home, both in the same local authority. So you can't be a student living in one place in Haringey and your parents also live in Haringey, you're registered twice and you vote twice. You can't do that.
Wow.
It has to be, you know, you moved away to somewhere else for university or, you know, a different London borough or something like that.
There's no finding loopholes for those of you who think you can. Talking about that, because this actually links into this question too. What are the punishments for someone who decided that they were going to vote twice for whatever reason that may be?
That's fraud.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know what the actual term would be, but you know,
Fraud,
you
probably fined as
you
well.
go in front of a court.
it
Probably
could be
a fine.
even more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite serious. Voter fraud is serious.
You know, the whole system. You know, we were talking earlier about like how secure are elections and how can we kind of make sure that votes are properly counted and all that sort of thing. Like, there are also a lot of restrictions around what political parties can do, what candidates can do, what voters can do, what those that work can do and cannot do, and punishments can be quite severe if you don't abide by them. Everyone that's part of the whole process. So you know, do pay attention to the rules and all that sort of thing. But it is explained to you as well when you get your ballot through and all of that sort of thing. Like I say, it's on the government website or whatever. But like, that's another thing that puts confidence in me that the system is being done properly, is that there are consequences.
Yeah.
You
How
know,
we declare our expenses, how much we spend, all of this is monitored and we're required to report. I mean, it's quite onerous. I mean, it's not a simple thing. So every party will have an agent during the process and to declare expenses, and there's certain ways you can communicate, something you can and cannot say. So it's all very strict.
The random question, I think some people kind of line themselves, will kind of get confused with like America and the US. Is there a thing where if you committed a crime you can't vote? Because I understand in some states if you've done certain crimes you can't vote. Is that the same thing here? Because some people think that might be wrong. I'm actually unsure because you, as I said,
I'm sure you can Google it. I'm not sure.
I think there's maybe something about if you're in prison.
If you're actually in prison,
not if you have a record.
Yeah, so if you're out and free, then you can vote. But if you're inside, then
I think that's the case.
Okay. I was just curious. It's just something.
We can Google that, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Once I'm registered to vote, in what elections can I vote in? I know we were speaking a bit of this off air, but just to bring it on air now, what sort of elections are people able to vote in once they register to vote?
General elections, that's voting for your member of parliament and then the government really.
Yeah.
So the member of parliament is then chosen and then it'll be majority party. You've got local elections, and me and Luke are both local councillors here in Haringey. You've got London-wide mayoral elections as well, so you'll vote for an assembly member and you'll get to vote directly for who the mayor of London should be as well. And things like referendums. So obviously we had the Brexit vote back in 2015.
Yeah.
2015 as well. So.
And you might even have local referendums.
Yeah.
You know, we've had a local referendum in Haringey in 2017 about a very particular neighbourhood taking some level of control over how things happened in their neighbourhood.
Yeah.
And they had to have a referendum so that particular place said, yes, we want to be the ones in control and determine our own destiny. So you may have little things like that which you may not notice are kind of going on because they don't have all of the the press attention of TV and print and whatever. The same with local elections were this year, and as Sarah said earlier, 25% turnout in some of our wards, 1 in 4 of those that voted, and I suspect there was a lot of people that didn't know the elections were happening, actually, because we can't reach everyone as politicians, either on the doors or with leaflets or letters or whatever else, and unfortunately the focus of national politics is on national politics. It's not in the run up to kind of local elections. There's this kind of constant we're going to have these TV debates or we're going to have this press coverage day after day after day of what's happening. So a lot of people just don't know that there may be else. They'll get the information through from the council, but once you're not, you've got other priorities and everything else, and you might not get that kind of reminder the day before that you're voting tomorrow, you may forget. So, if you do get that through, say add it to your calendar and
admittedly,
diarise it and all that, right?
But this year, when I went to my mum's house, there was a letter. I was like, "There's a vote." I was like, "What happened?" But in my head, I'm thinking it's a national thing. It's just something. If I see, it's just something that's. I think some people just assume they see a
ballot paper.
they see the ballot paper and they say, "Oh, it's a national election." It's like what? But there's not a. If it's not on TV, it's just like, well, what is it? As I've definitely done it myself. I'm like, there's something happening in the area, but because it hasn't been on TV, but because there hasn't been much noise around it or much news, it doesn't come to mind. I'm like, oh, I have to now vote for something. It's just, oh, okay, there's a local thing happening. Now I feel that actually happens to a lot of people. When you're asking about it, it's like, oh, there's a local election, and of course then the local election is for everyone to now get their voice heard, but it's like it's just that little.
Are we back to that point about people understanding what local politics
Yeah.
is, what
Yeah.
local democracy is? Because I think it's just not very interesting and exciting to a lot of people. So you say national, we keep talking about the US elections. Actually, it's so distant from us. And we were all interested. I was up watching CNN all night when Biden won. You know, my daughter was a year old. You know, sat in the little show and I'm watching it. You know, because it's exciting and local elections don't seem that exciting, but actually, there's a lot we do and a lot we influence. And I think that's the point. So it goes back to that conversation about actually making sure that people understand what local democracy is about, and it doesn't seem as glamorous as kind of national politics, but there's perhaps it isn't. But there's elements. There's a lot of power and things that you can get done.
It's also not just smart things. A lot of people will think, oh, it's just bins, council tax bins, potholes. It's not. It's building houses. More of your day-to-day. Local government decision-making affects so much more of your day-to-day than national politics does. You know, national legislation takes a long time to get through. Local decisions can happen quite quickly, and on the back of quite small numbers of people being involved, right? I mean, we'd all love that to be higher, but that's the reality. And we're talking about, like, how much does your voice count? It counts the biggest in a local election because that's the smallest election, right? So if you're voting on your ward, someone's going to get elected, you know, if it's a 25% turnout, they may be getting elected on a few hundred votes. You know, we've had by-elections here in Harringay where someone has been elected with just 250 votes.
Wow.
And then they stayed as a councillor for 20 years or something like that.
Wow.
Then after that, right?
Yeah,
so if you're talking about young people getting involved, how many people are in a school year? You know,
that's the number.
If someone put themselves forward and they got 250 votes, they could have got in. And I'm not saying do that, but that's the reality of local politics. Whereas if it's a general election and you have turnouts that, you know, in Harringay, turnouts up to 70% in a general election, and that's tens of thousands of people, and your vote counts slightly less because the difference between first and second generally is larger. Not always, of course. There's still some places where 1 or 2 votes count, but like if you want to make a difference with your single vote, it's in a local election. And also, you have the beauty of having multiple people elected to your area, right? So you can choose, in a local election, multiple people. You don't have that privilege in other elections. So you could say, well, I like this person, I've met them, I've spoken to them, I like this person. It doesn't have to be on party lines, maybe in the same way that you might feel national politics does, because there's that disconnect. This is like a direct connection with those, maybe parties, but people as well, and supporting those people and whatever. And also, it's an avenue in for a lot of people. Right? We probably both got involved with local politics before national politics, or I did. I don't know whether you were the same, but you know, it's kind of like you get involved in something local, and that spurs you on a little bit to kind of make a difference.
It's also where we don't hear from young people, you know, and I think what that does, and this happens nationally as well. I just gave some figures. Is that then the things that politicians are responding to are usually issues for older people, and that's the point. So, you know, you've spoken about, I'm not going to get into a policy conversation, but you've spoken about festivals and stuff, and often, you know, it's, you know, we can argue about the use of public spaces, and often it's older generations, you know, saying this is what we want our parks used for, and when we don't see young people going through, then actually what politicians do is just react to the loudest voices, which I think you said early on. So it's sort of issue based, but it's kind of, we don't hear from you, it's hard to kind of know and speak on your behalf.
Am I correct in saying that? And this is a personal view from the young people you work with and stuff as well. It's almost like you can complain about something that's not happening.
Amount of knowledge on the subject as well, so it's easy to like apply that generally, but everyone's in a different position, so it's just about getting that word out.
That's true.
Yeah.
What do you think we can do to, I don't want to use the word glamorize, but I would say excite young people to, you know, be more passionate about actually, this is a chance for your voice heard. And until they see, I guess, I don't want to say the exact side, but they just look at it like politics already, just the word alone could turn them from, you know, getting involved and getting their voice heard. What you could do to wake them up, and this is your future we're talking for you to, you know, have a say. What do you think we could do?
I think, like, there's a future too, but like there's a present. Like if we talk about the music festival idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were saying, you know, you felt empowered when you were just making small decisions like on the menu and choices like that, right? There's absolutely no reason why there can't be a collaborative festival, you know, for maybe the budget, but like as a general principle, that young people and the council work together to create something that is what they want, but also they are involved in generating, that they see the kind of behind the scenes. You know, they go through that back door and they're working on it together. And that, I think, gives that empowerment, makes people feel like they are part of what has been created, not that it's just been created for them.
Yeah.
You know, in a kind of like, oh, you said you wanted this, so here you go. We've done something for you. There's so many opportunities for that. I think sometimes it's difficult. It's difficult to kind of those first steps both ways, from the council getting people to come along for the ride, and then for young people to say, yeah, I want this and I want to be part of it. I'm willing to give my time for it, because you need to give time for it and you commit. But then you can create something beautiful at the end of it. Go out there and say, look, I was part of making this festival for me, my friends, my community, whatever, my family. You know, start a small street party.
Yeah.
We've got Kings Nation.
That'll be a great chance.
Street parties, right? Get involved. Set up some street parties. You know, the council has to be the one that say, yeah, you can go ahead and do it.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, kind of leave it up to the streets to kind of go their own way and decide what they want to do, and they'll help assist. So that's an opportunity.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, more, I guess, community events, but also when people do community events, we have to make sure what the message is of the event. It's not just a turn up. It's not just a party. We have to make sure that there is a message still sent out of these things. And that's what I think. What does you have? Events, we do have our local councillors do turning up to these things, and then they can still show face. Doesn't actually, and I guess what I'm always looking to see the MPs, but the MPs, like, but unfortunately, we don't know the council, like council do. I don't think councillors are. So, like, I think, as I said, a lot of people need to be truthful. A lot of them, their decisions are actually just could be their next door neighbours.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. What can we do to be more visible, more known?
It's interesting. As I said, I work in accounts and a lot. Councillors and MPs, and I know when I read some of the complaints, I know that they're doing their walk around. And often, like I say from experience, I don't know who. Well, prior to that, I wouldn't say who my local council look like. Even work for council. Now we're going to see both my councillors now. It's but now I know what your roles are. It makes me want to, like, okay, I can come to you rather than think there's a massive body of government first. It's like, okay, I see you, but as I said, I know people do walkarounds, but then if someone just knocks on my door and says, I'm a councillor, so what is that? A lot of people don't even know what a councillor is. So yes, this is
We were just saying not long ago that we need to do more as a council regularly to kind of make council, actual, and kind of, really simple in terms of what our roles are, who we are. This is when we're available, where we're available. Most councils, all councillors have a kind of a regular drop in what we call surgery, right? Where people can just come and see us. But it's only the people that know that we run surgeries and to go to the website and check the time and look where the location is, all that are going to go and do it, right? If you've got an issue, are you really going to think, I'll go to my counsellor and go through that process and then go and meet them at that? Like, it's unlikely, isn't it? You're probably going to work out what someone in your network can do. So we probably need to work out how we can be in that network, how we can kind of be a little bit more available to as big a group as possible, but particularly young people. Certainly, as a counsellor, I get engaged least by young people, I would say, and that's not. I've less problems. It's not right. So there must be all that. I don't know, but there must be. We would like to make sure that we as councillors are representing everyone.
And on that note, we are going to go to a little break, but keep a look right here because we have got more to, shed light on in this conversation. Keep a look right here. You're tuned into Unity Xtra. Time is 36 minutes past 8 o'clock on a Monday evening. Don't go away. Radio featuring Steph London coming to your ears. Independent Voter Registration Week, which runs from the 14th to the 20th of November 2022. Key message is every voice matters. For London's democracy to work for everyone, every voice must be heard. No vote, no voice. So never take your right to vote for granted. Take your place and register to vote. Back to our studio, yes, and our discussion we go. So I want to get into this question right here, because this is kind of interesting to me. Would your parents' council tax be affected if I registered to vote at their address? It shouldn't affect their council tax.
But unless they're like singles, if someone say you get relief if you live on your own, so it depends if mum or dad live on their own, you live with them. So in that sense, maybe it could affect the relief.
Outside of that, it's graded based on historical property values and a really bizarre formula, essentially. Not.
But some people get single persons.
Exactly. Yeah. Discount.
So,
yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that answers it. Right. Why is it important for the council to know how many registered voters there are in the borough?
So it helps us get a sense of who's living in the borough, know who in terms of tailoring our services and targeting them. So it's important to know, and it's important to vote. That's why we're here tonight, right? It's important that people have a voice and let us know what they want from us.
Earlier on in the show, I want to definitely touch back on this because we looked at some of the statistics with the West having 51% registered voters and the East having 25%.
No, voter turnout. The people who turned up and voted,
Right. So my question that I want to pose right now is the remainder percentage. What can we do? It always comes down to solutions. What can we do to drive more people to register to vote? Let's try to whip up some ideas. What do you think we can do to get those other percentages getting out to vote?
Like accessibility, you think about things like accessibility?
Accessibility could be one, I guess.
Yeah, you said you have proxy. It's proxy, isn't it?
Proxy is like an emergency vote.
Yes. If someone can't
go out for themselves
abroad or something like that. Okay, fair enough. That's answered it for me. That's actually answered that for me.
Okay, so proxy voting.
No, in terms of, as in if someone can't vote for you, what's like the other? You'd have a proxy vote, which.
Proxy is kind of emergency. So postal vote is different. So proxies, I know you've gone into hospital and you can do it as an emergency. I can't remember how many weeks in advance it is. It's only a couple, but it's a kind of emergency vote. So what you do is you make someone your proxy, and then they go and vote on your behalf. So obviously has to be someone you trust. But postal vote could be one way of it, because it's it's convenient. People who you said access, but actually more and more people going on the postal vote. It's easy when it comes to your house. You fill it out and then you just put it back in the post box.
It also is, statistically, it increases turnout because you have a high turnout from those that vote by post than those that are registered to vote in a polling station. A bit higher, actually. Not necessarily quite double, but not far off in some instances. So if you think you're twice as likely to vote if you are registered for a postal vote there or thereabouts than a ballot in a polling station, then that's one really good way. And with the potential of rides being needed in the future, that's something that's obviously looking like it's going to be coming in at some point next year.
What is that? Sorry, exactly. Got ID.
So at the moment, you don't need to take any form of identification at all, right? You can go to the polling station, so long as you're on the register, you just give your address and that's it. They don't check you are who you are. Being introduced next year is that you'll have to come kind of identification, like a driver's license, passport. Don't even know the details of what is going to tell you, but some kind of form of photo ID, like the ID at a bar or a supermarket or whatever, right? And it looks like that will probably return out amongst some groups. So if you are young, maybe you have a photo ID, particularly if you've not provisional license, you never really need to go abroad, you've got a passport or whatever, or if you're a new national or some of kind of minority group, you are more likely to not have an ID. And so it looks like that could have an impact on turnout. Now, there's been a suggestion that councils will have to provide IDs, but we don't know the details yet. But kind of, it looks like, let's say, a way around it is to register for a postal vote, because you won't need an ID to vote with a postal vote. So if you register for a postal vote, you still get your ballot through the post. It's back. So if you don't have that ID, you can still vote, right? Yeah. Register a postal vote. You don't need to go off and pay for a provisional license, which can be expensive, or anything like that. So kind of postal vote is a good way. Engagement, like, we need to just engage. We need to work out, like, that 75% that didn't vote. Why not? Did you not know that it just didn't matter? Did you not understand it about or parties, or you know, that? I think that's, we need to go out to the non-voters, let's say, and work that out if we want to kind of truly represent the whole community.
How has Brexit affected, or has Brexit affected those here and voting? Has it influenced anything? So when we come out with Brexit, has it influenced anyone's ability to vote?
I don't think it has. You mean like legislation has changed on whether Europeans can still vote and all that sort of thing? Yeah. I don't think directly yet. That's not to say that it might not in the future. Okay. But it's still the case that if you are European or Commonwealth, you can vote in local elections and not national. Is that right? Yeah. Commonwealth can vote in general elections as well. Just clarifying that. Commonwealth citizens can vote in general elections and local elections or whatever, but if you're an EU citizen, it's local elections only, right? And not, for example, the Brexit vote or a general election. But I think one thing it has done is kind of made votes seem very binary. You're either with this party that was kind of like maybe a Leave party or a Remain party, or a continuation of that in some form. So kind of that realignment of politics, I suppose, has happened in some shape, and that has affected voting quite heavily. And I also think that probably it led to turnout changes in certain areas depending on where they sat on Brexit and you know, all those decisions and whatever else. But nothing yet. But you know, who's to say what might happen? We didn't think I didn't think ID cards would be coming into our country to be needed to vote. And we are getting it.
Funny enough, when you talk about the ID thing, I remember when the last voting, my mum just said, just take your ID, and I was like, well, yeah. It was just an automatic thing, because anywhere else I go, if I was going for a drink, I'd have to get my ID. If I was going to buy something, like a game or eat, I'd probably have to. So in my head, I just went there. And I was actually, it did surprise me that when I got there, it was like, oh yeah, just your name and thing. I was like, oh, you don't need this. You don't need my. And they was like, oh, you don't need it. I was like, oh. Okay. So I still carried on voting, but it's just interesting that now it's going to be introduced, which I think is much better. Just one more question. Will that now, well, I guess it will have an effect because you have to have ID. Do you think that will now kind of shape, would that
deter people from voting?
I guess, do you think it will deter people from
from and then it's deeply concerning. I mean, I read out some stats earlier, and I think Luke's already, you know, some people just are going to be disenfranchised further by this. So it's deeply concerning. It's not something I welcome in terms of its introduction. It's making things harder, and we're already struggling in certain areas with certain groups in terms of getting people to vote and register to vote. So it's very concerning, and it's just that the government have made it even harder.
Yes, it's kind of like put your information out, do this, and it's like,
well, I guess, you know, the older you are, the more likely you are to have that ID.
Right.
Yeah.
Just naturally through life, you will have perhaps collected it at some point, or you know, generational or traditional or whatever. So it is more likely to skew in favour of having even more older voters, or even a bigger older cohort have a kind of a stronger presence vote share. And again, that's not necessarily proportional to kind of makeup of the country. So it's going to skew. I think it's going to skew things. I'm like Pera, I'm dead against it, but because we need to be getting people to vote.
you see your vote as your right. You know, it's your right to vote. And
Yeah.
I think we haven't touched on it tonight, but you know, there is that whole thing about people who have fought for generations, whether that's women, whether people, you know, working class people have fought for the vote, and you know, it's we've just got to remember it in those terms as well. It's our right, and introducing something that makes it even more difficult, then we've just got to say, do you know what, we're going to make sure that we will have our, you know, we will exercise our right to vote. Just got to remember it in those terms.
And it's so interesting that you touched on that topic right there, your rights, as we are going to get into the next show about all of that. But just to leave you with this question, what are your rights to vote for voters in Haringey?
What are your rights?
What are your rights?
So if you're over 18, you're registered to vote in the borough, then you have the right to vote. And we've just gone through different categories, so certain, you know, if you're an EU citizen, you might not be able to vote in the general election, but you can vote in the locals. But it's you have the right to choose your representatives. And you know, actually, you know, I know, Kel, you've said a few times, you know, trust in politicians, but politicians will come to you with a manifesto and pledges. This is what we're going to do. You exercise your right, and then, you know, you don't go away for 4 or 5 years, or you don't allow them to go away. You hold them to account through, you know, through local and national democratic sort of procedures. But that's your right. It's your right to vote, and you have to exercise it.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Councillor Paray Ahmed, Leader of Haringey, and Councillor Luke Hawley Harrison, Leader of the Opposition at Haringey Council. And of course to the 3 young individuals that was on the panel tonight, Mikel, Ella and Alison. Join us for the next show on Thursday, 7 to 9 p.m. Thank you for all of you who tuned in tonight's show as a part of London Voters Registration Week. Have a blessed evening, and I hope you all remain in good spirits. Take care.
Is a 2-part radio campaign on Unity Xtra to mark London Voter Registration
So
Week.
talk now.